Welcome to Greatest NFL Players in Football History, a documentary series dedicated to the serious NFL football fan and chronicling the history of some of the greatest players in NFL history. Today, what we're going to cover is top 20 greatest quarterbacks of all time. Boy, I tell you, being a quarterback is something else. Boy, back in my glory days, oh man. Boy, I can tell you, oh man. I can just think about it. Wow. Being a quarterback is maybe the ultimate position on the football field. A position of leadership. A position where you are so in a position to affect the outcome of the game. One of the number one factors in the outcome of a game is the quarterback matchups. So, without further ado, let's get into this. Now, I could call this the top 30 quarterbacks of all time, but because I have enough of them, let's say I do have the top 20 list. I also have first team honorable mention, second team honorable mention, and third team honorable mention. Let's cover just very quickly people who made the third team honorable mention. We have Mr. John Brady. Mr. John Brady. What did Mr. John Brady do? Well, if I can find him here. Mr. John Brady played his entire career for the San Francisco 49ers from 1957 to 1973, 17 years, amassed 31,548 passing yards on 55.0% completion, 214 touchdowns, 224 interceptions. Our record as a quarterback, 74-76. Not in the Hall of Fame, no championships, and to number 12 is Mr. John Brady's number. And next up on I have him at number 33 on this list. At number 32, I have also a gentleman who did not make the Hall of Fame, and his name is John Hadle. Mr. John Hadle played 16 years, from 1962 to 1977, wore the number 21 and 12. He was on the AFL championship team of 1963. He completed 50.4% of his passes, Mr. Hadle did, for 33,503 yards, 244 touchdowns, 268 interceptions. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention the rating. The rating of our previous guy, Mr. John Brady, 72.3 quarterback rating. Mr. Hadle here, he had a quarterback rating of 67.4. All right, from there we are going to move into number 31. George Blanda, a timeless wonder, who also, Mr. Blanda also was a place kicker. Mr. Blanda played his career, well, first of all, Mr. Blanda wore the numbers 64, 22, number 16. Mr. Blanda, I am very sorry, is in the Hall of Fame. 26 years played, spanning from 1949 to 1975. Played with Chicago Bears, Houston Oilers, and the Oakland Raiders. Mr. Blanda is a three-time AFL champion. Mr. Blanda was MVP of the AFL in 1961. And all the first team, all AFL as well that year, probably goes without saying. Mr. Blanda passed for 47.7% and 26,920 yards, 236 touchdowns, 277 interceptions. Mr. Blanda's team had a record of 53-50, and Mr. Blanda's rating was 60.6. Not really that great of stats, in my opinion. Played a lot of years, and being a place kicker was helpful in that. At number 30, I have Mr. Bob Waterfield. Mr. Bob Waterfield. Mr. Bob Waterfield wore number 7, is in the Hall of Fame, 2-time NFL champion, the MVP of the NFL in 1945, 3 times first team All-Pro, a known record of the team while Mr. Waterfield is quarterback, 14-8. Mr. Waterfield played from 1945 to 1952, just 8 years. Completed 50.3% of his passes for 11,849 yards, 97 touchdowns, 128 interceptions, and 61.6 rating. Next, we are going to move on to, and that's all of the third team honorable mention. Second team honorable mention, present day fellow, Mr. Kirk Cousins. Mr. Kirk Cousins has played, this is his 7th year right now, began in 2012. Mr. Kirk Cousins has got a completion percentage, it's pretty nice, 66.1%, 18,127 yards, a record of 29 wins, 32 losses, and 2 ties, 111 touchdowns, 58 interceptions, no championships, by the way, no MVPs, and 94.7 rating. I will point out that Mr. Kirk Cousins, for his first 3 years of his career, was not recognized as the guy. Had to play in the shadows of RG3. So, now, next we have got, coming in at number 28, Bobby Lane. Mr. Bobby Lane. Where are you, Bobby? There you are. Mr. Bobby Lane, number 22, Hall of Fame, 3-time NFL champion, 3-time first team All-Pro, played from 1948 to 1962, 15 years, 175 games, played with Chicago Bears, New York Bulldogs, Detroit Lions, Pittburgh Steelers. He wrapped up his career with them. Bobby Lane passed for 49%, 26,768 passing yards, 196 touchdowns, 243 interceptions, 63.4 rating. Now, next we have on our list, at 27, Mr. Warren Moon, a man known that when he released the ball, it was known to make a sound. When the man released the ball, I tell you, he got some good velocity on his passes. Maybe a little bit too hot to handle sometimes. Mr. Warren Moon, Hall of Famer, wore number 1, played first of all in the Canadian Football League for, I believe, 6 years, 5-time championship of the Canadian Football League. Figured he must have mastered that. It was time to capitalize. Came over to the NFL, played 17 years in the NFL from 1984 to 2000, amassing total of 23 years as a pro. I will mention the last 2 years of his career, he was content to sit on the bench for Kansas City. Played for Houston Oilers, Minnesota Vikings, Seattle Seahawks, and then Kansas City Chiefs. no NFL champions. MVP of 1990. All right, Mr. Warren Moon had a record of 102 and 101. A lot of these guys here mentioning having records of about 50% winning, about 50-50 on their wins and losses. Warren completed 58% of his passes for 49,325 yards, 291 touchdowns against 233 interceptions. And I also will say Mr. Warren Moon retired at age 44. And I personally remember Warren Moon being effective still as a quarterback at age 42. Currently the oldest effective quarterback that I've ever seen play in the NFL. I know Mr. Tom Brady is taking a run at that. Warren Moon with a rating of 80.9. So, does that get us out of all the second team honorable mention? No, there are still two more. Mr. Elisha Manning, better known as Eli Manning, but I like Elisha. Elisha Manning. Elisha, in the Bible, first person to be recorded as raising a person from the dead, and that's in the Old Testament, an inferior covenant to the one that we've got now. Eli Manning, number 10, two-time Super Bowl champion, has played his entire career so far with the New York Giants from 2004 on up to now, 15 years and running, 222 games, 60.1 completion percentage, 53,344 yards, 345 touchdowns, 232 interceptions, 83.7 rating. I want to say Elisha Manning, he is the first of 3 quarterbacks on this list that were drafted in the 2004 NFL draft class. And then the last person to make up the second team honorable mention is Mr. Sonny Jurgensen. Mr. Sonny Jurgensen, better known as, or his full name is Christian Adolf Jurgensen. That middle name, that could be a rough one. Christian Adolf Jurgensen. Okay, number 9 was worn by Sonny Jurgensen. He is a Hall of Famer. I want to say everyone on this list from number 30 on up are either Hall of Famers or they're going to be, in my opinion, I predict that they will be. Sonny Jurgensen, number 9, Hall of Fame. Excuse me again. One-time NFL champion, played for Philadelphia and Washington. 2-time first-team All-Pro. 1957 to 1974, 18 years, 218 games. Completed 57.1% of his passes for 32,224 passing yards. 255 touchdowns for Mr. Sonny. 189 interceptions. 82.6 rating. Then we have first team honorable mention. Coming in as quarterback, rated number 24 on the list, Mr. Dan Fouts. Mr. Dan Fouts, number 14, Hall of Fame. Played all his career for the San Diego Chargers. The San Diego Superchargers, 1973 to 1987, 15 years, 181 games. No championships, 2-time first team All-Pro, a record of 86 wins, 84 losses, 58.8% completions, 43,040 yards, 254 touchdowns, 242 interceptions, a rating of 80.2. We'll go ahead and, this is close, we'll say about 19 completions a game, 238 yards per game, 7.7 yards per attempt. The touchdown to interception ratio 1.0 and interception percentage 4.3%. Again, 80.2 rating for Mr. Dan Fouts from 1973 to 1987. Number 23, Y.A. Tittle. Mr. Y.A. Tittle. Mr. Y.A. Tittle wore the numbers 63, 64, and 14. Excuse me. Hall of Famer, no championships. Played from 1948 to 1964. 17 years for Mr. Y.A. Tittle. 55.2% completions, 33,070 yards. Also, Mr. Tittle played for the Baltimore Colts, San Francisco 49ers, and New York Giants. Was the 1963 MVP and four-time first-team All-Pro. A record of 78 and 50. Continuing on with his stats, 242 touchdowns, 248 interceptions for Mr. Y.A. Tittle, 16 completions per game, 162 yards per game, 7.5 yards per attempt, the touchdown to interception ratio 1.0, interception percentage 5.6%, and a rating of 74.3 for Mr. Y.A. Tittle, coming in at number 23 on the list. Number 22 on the list, a present-day player, Mr. Matt Ryan. Mr. Matt Ryan in first team honorable mention. Where are you, Mr. Matty Ice? Mr. Matty Ice, number 2, no championships, has played his entire career so far for the Atlanta Falcons. 2008, he began his career, 11 years and going so far. And a record as quarterback, 96 wins and 67 losses. Completed 65.0% of his passes, 43,397 yards, 271 touchdowns against 128 interceptions. Is a 2.1 touchdown to interception ratio, 2.2 interception percentage, getting pretty low there. 23 completions a game, 266 yards per game, 7.5 yards per attempt, and 94.0 rating for Mr. Matt Ryan. For the final person on first team honorable mention to the top 20 list, coming in at number 21, the Scrambler, Mr. Fran Tarkenton. Mr. Fran Tarkenton. Grab Mr. Fran's stats here. The Scrambler, number 10, Hall of Famer. Mr. Fran Tarkenton did not win any championships, but he did go to a few Super Bowls. He was one-time first-team All-Pro and NFL MVP 1975. Played for Minnesota Vikings and also wrapped it up with the New York Giants. The Scrambler played from 1961 to 1978, 18 years, 246 games, a record of 124 wins, 109 losses, completed 57.0% of his passes for 47,003 yards, 342 touchdowns against 266 interceptions. Was that the first one to crack 300 touchdowns there? Maybe, maybe not. 1.3 touchdown to interception ratio and 4.1 interception percentage. Also, didn't grab his completions per game, but 191 yards per game, 7.3 yards per attempt, 80.4 rating for the Scrambler, Mr. Fran Tarkenton. And now we crack into our top 20 greatest quarterbacks of all time in NFL history. And coming in at number 20 is Mr. Arnie Herber, the how can I say it other than the oldest person on this list, the person most far back in time to originate on this list. Mr. Arnie Herber played from 1930 to 1945, 16 years in the NFL. Number 38 is what Mr. Arnie wore, Hall of Famer. 4-time NFL champion with the Packers and the Giants. I want to point out, so Mr. Arnie Herber, he began his career in 1930. The NFL did not even begin to record passing statistics until 1932. So Mr. Arnie Herber got cheated of 2 years of his passing statistics. And I want to say, it did help that in the early part, maybe even the first half of Mr. Herber's career, he was getting to pass to Don Hutson, potentially the greatest receiver of all time. On my list, I believe that I've got him number 3. Now, Mr. Arnie Herber, in his 16-year career, completed 481 passes out of 1,175 attempts for 40.9%, 8,041 yards, 81 touchdowns against 106 interceptions for a touchdown to interception ratio of 0.8, an interception percentage of 9.0%, 62 yards per game, 6.8 yards per attempt, a rating of 50.1 for Mr. Arnie Herber. And by the way, besides being a 4-time NFL champion, 3 times first-team All-Pro. For Mr. Arnie Herber. Excuse me. Next, Mr. Terry Bradshaw. Mr. Terry Bradshaw, number 12, Hall of Famer. 4-0. 4 wins and 0 losses, undefeated in Super Bowl matches. So, 4-time NFL champion, MVP in 1978. Mr. Bradshaw, drafted number 1 overall in the second draft class, drafted by Chuck Noll. He Mr. Terry played from 1970 to 1983, 14 years, 168 games, completed 2,025 passes out of 3,901 attempts for 51.9% completion, a record of 107 wins and 51 losses. If I didn't say, passing yards, 27,989 yards, 212 touchdowns, 210 interceptions, for 1.0 on the touchdown to interception ratio, 5.4% interception rate, 166.6 yards per game, 7.2 yards per attempt, and 70.9 for the rating of Mr. Bradshaw. So Mr. Bradshaw was a little bit deficient in his statistics, yet had 4 Super Bowl championships, was undefeated in Super Bowls, and posted a record of 107 wins and 51 losses. Now, granted, Terry was playing with one of the greatest defenses of all time, led by the Steel Curtain or the Steel Curtain defense. Depends on... That's just the defensive line. They called themselves the Steel Curtain, and they were a little bit possessive of that. They didn't want the entire Steelers defense to be called the Steel Curtain, but however it worked out, you know, it's fine with me. The Steel Curtain defense was a head-rocking bunch. So, that's Mr. Terry Bradshaw. At number 18, I have got Mr. Philip Rivers. Now, Mr. Philip Rivers, Mr. Green Hut, Philip Rivers, number 17, played all his career for the San Diego Chargers. No championships, no Super Bowl appearances. 2013 Comeback Player of the Year, though. Mr. Philip Rivers, like Elisha Manning came in the 2004 draft class, like also Ben Roethlisberger. So far, Mr. Phillip Rivers he's in his 15th year and continuing on, 201 games, 4,293 completions on 6,666 attempts for 64.4% completion, 51,843 yards, a record of 109 wins, 88 losses, 355 touchdowns, 168 interceptions for a touchdown to interception ratio of 2.1 and interception percent of 2.5%. 22 completions a game, 258 yards per game, 7.8 yards per attempt, and 95.4 quarterback rating for Mr. Phillip Rivers at number 18 on the list. Number 17, Mr. Kurt Warner of The Greatest Show on Turf. As Kurt Warner said, without Marshall Faulk, we wouldn't be the greatest show on turf. Anyway, so Mr. Kurt Warner, number 13, Hall of Famer. And I want to say, Mr. Kurt Warner is also in the Arena Hall of Fame. I understand that there are two big Arena Football Hall of Fame dudes, and that is Kurt Warner and Antonio Brown's dad. I'm sorry I didn't do the research to catch that man's name. Kurt Warner, one-time Super Bowl champ, did appear in three Super Bowls and was competitive in all three and put up some serious yards. Mr. Kurt Warner played in the NFL from 1998 to 2009, 12 years, 124 games. Two-time MVP, a record of 67 wins, 49 losses. Completed 2,666 passes on 4,070 attempts for 65.5% completion percentage. 32,344 yards, 208 touchdowns, 128 interceptions for a touchdown to interception ratio of 1.6 and 3.1% interception percentage. 23 completions a game, 261 yards per game, 7.9 yards per attempt. And for Mr. Kurt Warner, a 93.7 rating. Coming in now, at number 16, a smooth customer with many fourth quarter comebacks, Mr. John Elway, who played Mr. Elway, number 7, Hall of Famer, played all of his career with the Denver Broncos. Mr. Elway, Hall of Famer, as I said, two-time Super Bowl champion, MVP in 1987. Mr. Elway played from 1983 to 1998, 16 years, 234 games, completed 4,123 passes on 7,250 attempts for 56.9 completion percentage, a record of 148 wins and 82 losses. Passing yards, 51,475. 300 touchdowns, 226 interceptions for a touchdown to interception ratio of 1.3 and 3.1 interception percent. 18 completions a game, 220 yards per game, 7.1 yards per attempt. And for Mr. Elway, a 79.7 rating. Now we're into the top 15. At number 15, we have Mr. Norm Van Brocklin. Mr. Norm Van Brocklin, who wore numbers 11 and number 25, is a Hall of Famer, of course, two-time NFL champion, MVP in 1960, played for the LA Rams and Philadelphia Eagles. 1949 to 1960, 12-year career, 140 games for Mr. Norm Van Brocklin. A record of 61 wins, 36 losses. Completed 1,553 passes on attempts of 2,895 for 53.6 completion percentage, 23,611 passing yards, 173 touchdowns, 178 interceptions for a touchdown to interception ratio of 1.0, 6.1 interception percent, 169 yards per game, 8.2 yards per attempt, 75.1 rating for Mr. Norm Van Brocklin. Next, we have at number 14, Mr. Steve Young. Mr. Steve Young began his career for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and then did the majority of his career with the San Francisco 49ers. Mr. Steve Young, number 8, Hall of Famer, 3-time Super Bowl champion, as he got 2 ride-alongs as Joe Montana led championship teams. The Steve Young was the backup quarterback on. 2 times Mr. Steve Young was the MVP of the league, 1992 and 1994. 3-time first-team All-Pro. Mr. Steve Young played from 1985 to 1999, 15 years, 169 games, a record of 94 wins and 49 losses. Completed 2,667 passes on 4,149 attempts, 64.3% completions, 33,124 yards, 232 touchdowns, 107 interceptions, for a touchdown to interception ratio of 2.2 and 2.6 interception percentage. 196 yards per game, 8.0 yards per attempt, and a 96.8 quarterback rating. Mr. Steve Young did have to play in the shadow of Joe Montana, so he wasn't able to put up as many cumulative all-time numbers as he would otherwise have. So, we move on up to the highest Pittsburgh Steeler on this list. Number 13, the Ben Roethlisberger. Mr. Ben Roethlisberger. Big Ben. Number 7. 2004, Mr. Ben began his career just like Elisha Manning and Phillip Rivers. Big Ben coming in at 6'5", 6 foot 5 inches tall, 240 pounds, is a 2-time Super Bowl champion with the Pittsburgh Steelers all of his career. A record of 137 wins and 65 losses. Completed 4,302 passes on attempts of 6,708 attempts for a completion percentage of 64.1%. Passing yards, 52,729 passing yards, 340 touchdowns, 180 interceptions for touchdown to interception ratio of 1.9, 2.7 interception percentage, 21 completions a game, 257 yards per game passing, 7.9 yards per attempt, 94 rating for Mr. Ben Roethlisberger. And Mr. Ben is number 7 on the all-time passing list. Mr. Elisha Manning is number 6, I shall mention. And so, we've covered Mr. Ben here. Next we have got number 12 on this list. Number 12, that's a popular number for quarterbacks to wear, but number 12 here is not wearing number 12. Number 12 is wearing number 3. And number 12's name here, number 3's name here is Mr. Russell Wilson. Mr. Russell Wilson is a one-time Super Bowl champion, and probably would be a two-time Super Bowl champion if his coach would have called to run the ball on 1st and goal from the 1 or 2 yard line with Marshawn Lynch. So, Mr. Russell Wilson, I will say, in addition to the one-time Super Bowl champion so far, was Rookie of the Year in 2012 in a stiff class with RG3 and Andrew Luck. Russell began his NFL career in 2012, so he's in his 7th year and working on 101 games, completed 1,000, or a record also, 67 wins, 33 losses, completed 1,904 balls on 2,976 attempts for 64.0 completion percentage, 23,262 yards passing, 171 touchdowns, 59 interceptions for 2.9 touchdown to interception ratio, and 2.0 interception percent. Getting pretty small there, Russell. 2.0 interception percent? Nice. 19 completions a game, 230 yards per game, 7.8 yards per attempt. And Mr. Russell, a smoking 98.9 rating. I think doctors would approve. So, number 11 did not quite make top 10, and that's Dan Marino, who is number 5 on the all-time yards passing list. Mr. Dan Marino. Number 13, Hall of Fame, Daniel Constantine Marino. No championships, but MVP in 1984 and 3-time first-team All-Pro with a record of 147 wins, 93 losses. Mr. Dan played 1983 to 1999, 17 years, 242 games, Miami Dolphins. 4,967 completions on attempts of 8,358 for completion percentage of 59.4%, 61,361 yards, 420 touchdowns, 252 interceptions for a 1.7 touchdown to interception ratio, 3.0 interception percent. 21 completions a game, 254 yards per game passing, 7.3 yards per attempt, and for Mr. Daniel Constantine Marino, 86.4 rating. Now we move into our top 10, and I want to say the Green Bay Packers are well represented here. It just so works out that we've got 3 consecutive Green Bay Packers here. And this is not rigged. Coming in at number 10, Brett Lorenzo Favre. Number 4, Hall of Fame, one-time champion, 3 consecutive MVPs from 1995 through 1997. A record of 187 wins, 112 losses. Mr. Favre played for Green Bay Packers, New York Jets for 1 year, and wrapped it up with the Minnesota Vikings. 1991 was Mr. Favre's rookie year through 2010. Got in a full 20 years in 302 games. Iron Man Favre completed 6,300 passes on 10,169 attempts for a 62.0% completion rate. His 71,838 yards passing has him number 3 all-time currently. 508 touchdowns. Again, 508 touchdowns against 336 interceptions for 1.5 touchdown to interception ratio, 3.3 interception percent, 21 completions a game, 238 yards per game, 7.1 yards per attempt, and for Mr. Brett Lorenzo Favre, 86.0 rating. Number 9. Who's the next Packer that we have on our list? Number 9 is Mr. Bart Starr. Number 15 is what Bart Starr wore. Mr. Bart Starr, of course, Hall of Famer, 5-time NFL or Super Bowl champion. NFL MVP 1966. A career record for Mr. Bart Starr of 94 wins and 57 losses. Mr. Starr's career ranged from 1956 to 1971, 16 years, 196 games. Completed 1,808 passes on 3,149 attempts for 57.0% completion percentage, 24,718 passing yards, 152 touchdowns, 138 interceptions for a touchdown to interception ratio of 1.1 and 4.4 interception percentage. 11.5 completions a game, 126 yards per game, 7.8 yards per attempt, and 80.5 rating for Mr. Bart Starr. Now, I think that you can probably guess then who number 8 is. This Packer, his number is number 12. He's going to be a Hall of Famer, that's for sure. Mr. AR, Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Charles Rodgers, one-time champion over the Steelers. And Mr. Aaron Rodgers, 2-time MVP. He's got, this cool customer has 96 wins under his belt and against 50 losses. Career 2005 to 2014, 14 years, and continuing on, 154 games. Completions of 3,319 on 5,103 attempts, 65.0% completion percentage, 40,074 passing yards, 323 touchdowns, only 79 interceptions against, again, 323 passing touchdowns against 79 interceptions. That is an NFL record ratio for touchdown to interceptions of 4.09. 4.09 touchdown to interception ratio. And a 1.5 interception percentage, which is also an NFL record. A rating, which is also an NFL record, 103.7. Mr. Aaron Charles Rodgers. Packers have themselves a good quarterback. And have had a bunch of them. They've got the highest average position of quarterbacks on this list, I believe. They're the best represented on this list, in my opinion. Coming in at number 7. So again, this documentary series, as I have failed to mention this time, one of the purposes is to celebrate and bring back to remembrance some players that have been either forgotten or practically forgotten, such as Mr. Arnie Herber at number 20 on the list. But at number 7, we have Mr. Sid Luckman. I like that name, Luckman. The Luckman! Sid Luckman wore number 42 is a Hall of Famer, 4-time NFL champion, MVP in 1943, 5-time first-team All-Pro. Mr. Sid Luckman played his entire career for the Chicago Bears, 12 years, 128 games, ranging from 1939 to 1950. Completed 904 passes on 1,744 attempts for a completion percentage of 51.8%. They don't have any known record for what he did as far as the wins and losses. I'm sure they were very good because the Chicago Bears were very powerful back then. His passing yards, 14,686 passing yards for Mr. Sid Luckman. 137 touchdowns, 132 interceptions. Ratio there, 1.0 on touchdowns to interceptions, and 7.6 interception percentage. 115 yards per game, 8.4 yards per attempt. That's really high, 8.4 yards per attempt. And a 75.0 rating for Mr. Sid Luckman. He must have been throwing some bombs. So, coming in at number 6, we've got the first guy that probably some people would have number 1, Mr. Joe Montana, who played the bulk of his career with the San Francisco 49ers and then wrapped it up with the Kansas City Chiefs. As far as right now, number 16 and number 19 when he was with the Chiefs, because Len Dawson's got number 16 retired for the Chiefs. Mr. Joe Montana, he is the last one to win a playoff game for the Kansas City Chiefs, and he did it against my Steelers in, I believe, 1992. So, Mr. Joe Montana, without any further ado, Joseph Clifford Montana, 4-time Super Bowl champion, 2-time MVP, 1989 and 1990, 3-time first-team All-Pro, played from 1979 to 1994. Number 16 played 16 years, 192 games, 3,409 completions on 5,391 attempts, 63.2 completion percentage, 40,551 passing yards. Record, by the way, of 117 wins and only 47 losses. 273 touchdowns, 139 interceptions for a 2.0 touchdown to interception ratio and 2.6 interception percentage. 21 completions a game. Well, 21 completions per game started, 18 completions per game, 211 yards per game, 7.5 yards per attempt, and Mr. Joe Montana, Joseph Clifford Montana, 92.3 rating. Now, we move into our top 5 greatest quarterbacks of all time, NFL history. Number 5, Otto Graham. Mr. Otto Graham wore the numbers 60 and 14. Mr. Otto Graham, obviously a Hall of Famer, 3-time NFL champion, 3-time MVP, 4-time first team All-Pro, 10-year career, 126 games, 1946 to 1955. Mr. Otto Graham put up a known record of 57 wins, 5-7, 57 wins, and only 13 losses. Mr. Otto Graham had season records known here. Check this out. Records 10-2, 11-1, 8-4. That was the worst one. 10-1, 9-3, 9-2-1. Those were the recorded stats there, according to NFLProReference.com. Now, Mr. Otto Graham completed 1,464 passes on 2,626 attempts for 55.8% completion, 23,584 passing yards, 174 touchdowns against 135 interceptions for a ratio of 1.3 touchdowns to interception and 5.1 interception percentage. 13 completions per game, 187 yards per game, 9.0 yards per attempt, which I believe is the highest on this list in an NFL record. 86.6 rating for Otto Graham. So, this gets us to quarterback number 4. The 4th best quarterback of all time is Peyton Williams Manning. Peyton Manning, number 18, certainly to be Hall of Fame. 2-time Super Bowl champ, 5-time MVP. MVP in the years 2003, 2004, 2008, 2009, and 2013, which followed his 2012 Comeback Player of the Year award. Mr. Peyton Manning, a record of 186 wins, 79 losses. Played from 1998 to 2015, 18 years for number 18, 266 games, 6,125 completions on 9,380 attempts for a completion percentage of 65.3%, 71,940 yards, which currently is good for 2nd all-time. A couple weeks ago, it was 1st all-time. 539 touchdowns is currently 1st all-time, but I bet by the time you're watching this, it won't be. 539 touchdowns, 251 interceptions, for a touchdown to interception ratio of 2.15. 2.7 interception percentage. Then we have 23 completions a game, 270 yards per game, 7.7 yards per attempt, and a 96.5 passer rating for Mr. Peyton Manning. Number 3 quarterback of all time, John Constantine Unitas. Mr. Johnny Unitas. He wasn't good enough. He wasn't good enough to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. They had him like on a practice squad for a year or maybe or something like that. They cut him. They cut Johnny U. Can you believe it? But Johnny U, he was good enough to be a Baltimore Colt. And no, I didn't mention that Peyton Manning played for Indianapolis Colts and Denver Broncos. Okay, I should have. Johnny Unitas played for Baltimore Colts and then finished out with 1 season with the San Diego Chargers. San Diego Superchargers. Mr. number 19, Johnny Unitas, 3-time NFL or Super Bowl champion. Born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but again cut by the Steelers. Never threw 1 pass on record for the Steelers. Gosh. 1955 practice squad. Off-season or practice squad. Gosh. Anyhow, 3-time NFL or Super Bowl champion. 3-time MVP. MVP in 1959, 1964, and 1967. 5-time First Team All-Pro. Played 1956 to 1973, 18 years, just like number 18 did, 211 games. Completed 2,830 passes on 5,186 attempts for 54.6 completion percentage, 40,239 yards, 290 touchdowns, 253 interceptions for a 1.1 touchdown to interception ratio and 4.9 interception rate. "15 completions per game started, 13 completions per game, 190 yards per game, 7.8 yards per attempt. And for Mr. Johnny Unitas, 78.2 rating. Now, this gets us to who's number one and who's number two. We have two quarterbacks left. We have obviously Mr. Tom Brady and Mr. Drew Brees. So, who is better? I mean, Tom Brady's got 5 Super Bowl victories here. Drew Brees just got 1. But in a controversial decision, I'm going to name Tom Brady second best quarterback of all time. Tom Edward Patrick Brady. Number 12. Hall of Fame? I think so. 5-time Super Bowl champion. 3-time MVP. That was 2007 MVP, 2010, and 2017. Comeback Player of the Year in 2009 after a devastating knee injury. A record of 199 wins and 57 losses. That's now been 200 wins. 5,750 completions. I'm sorry. Mr. Tom Brady started his career in 2000. He's played, now this is 19th year, and probably still going to be counting. 5,750 completions on 8,984 attempts for a completion percentage of 64.0%. 67,418 yards, 500 touchdowns, now it's a little greater, 166 interceptions for a touchdown to interception ratio of 3.0, second all time. 1.8 interception percentage, second all time. 22 completions a game, 266 yards passing per game, 7.5 yards per attempt, and for Mr. Tom Brady, a 97.5 rating. That gets us to Mr. Drew Brees is the best quarterback, the greatest quarterback of all time. And how can I say that when he's just got 1 Super Bowl championship to Tom Brady's 5? It's because that if the roles were reversed, I believe Drew Brees would have at least as good a success as Tom Brady has had with Bill Belichick and the Patriots. Mr. Drew Christopher Brees, number 7, Hall of Fame, written all over the man. 1-time Super Bowl champion. Played his career with San Diego Chargers and the New Orleans Saints. I actually saw Drew play with the San Diego Chargers. And back then, played against the Rams, St. Louis Rams at the time. And back then, Mr. Drew Brees was playing a distant second fiddle on offense to Mr. LaDainian Tomlinson, who was setting records, like most touchdowns in a season, most combined touchdowns in a season, I think 28, if I remember right. Still stands, I believe. Mr. Drew Brees, a record of 146 wins, 107 losses. Started his career in 2001. This is his 18th year, and he'll still be going. 254 games. 6,370 completions on 9,484 attempts. By the way, that's 6,370 completions. That's an NFL record. For an NFL record, 67.2 completion percentage. An NFL record, 72,103 passing yards. 499 touchdowns, 228 interceptions for a touchdown to interception ratio of 2.2. 2.4 interception percentage, 25.1 completions per game for an NFL record, 25.2 completions per game started for an NFL record. An NFL record in yards per game, 283.9. If he'd just only been with New Orleans the whole time, putting up the numbers like he's put up with New Orleans, that number would be over 300 yards per game. 7.6 yards per attempt. And for Mr. Drew Brees, a 97.3 rating. So the first person to carry the torch of a great quarterback in the NFL, Mr. Arnie Herber, 1930 to 1945. Okay. Then, who did he pass the torch to? Oh, by the way, Arnie Herber rating of Mr. Arnie Herber, 50.1. Next, we got a really great quarterback, Sid Luckman, 1939 to 1950. And Mr. Sid Luckman's rating, 75.0. Now, Mr. Luckman passed the torch on to Mr. Otto Graham, 1946 to 1955. Johnny Unitas, 1956 to 1973, a rating of 78.2. Then one might be able to argue that the torch was passed to Joe Montana, 1979 to 1994, rating of 92.3. Now, from there, we go to passing the torch to Peyton Manning, 1998 to 2015, a rating of 96.5. Then, since then, I say we're here. 7A, Drew Brees. 7B, Tom Brady. Tom Brady's rating, 97.5, and Drew Brees' rating, 97.3. Now, the highest that we have in NFL history is a rating of 103.7 by Mr. Aaron Rodgers. Now, before we go thinking these guys back in the days could not play the game, let's just take a look at how the football has changed since 1869, courtesy of boyslife.org. So it said the first football game was played in 1869. Here's how the ball has changed since then. 1874. Look at that thing. It looks like a watermelon that got shrunk on the ends. 1906. Look what we're dealing with. I mean, it's kind of a glorified shot put. 1920. Look at that odd thing. I mean, obviously they're just piecemealing these things together, just as, you know, obviously by hand with no kind of a machine. When you look at these odd edges on this thing, that's 1920. It said the Spalding JF-5 or JF-V became the official ball of the American Professional Football Association. It was a more aerodynamic spheroid shape that could be thrown more accurately, giving birth to the perfect spiral and paving the way for the modern passing game. 1935. Now we're starting to have balls that look decent. The newly formed National Football League shortened the ball's length to about 11 inches, the shape and size still used today. Officially, the shape is known as a prolate spheroid. 1941. Look at it now. Wilson became the official manufacturer of the NFL footballs and has been ever since. The company has made minor improvements like gripping and better laces, but not much has changed. In fact, the football has been designed and manufactured in the same way for decades. Then there came the Duke. Now this is about, the Duke came about when Pete Rozelle, I believe, was the commissioner, or maybe it was before that, when it was Mr. Raiders, Al Davis. I think Al Davis had to do with the invention of the Duke football. Wanted a ball that was really good for passing, And you know, Al Davis liked to throw the ball deep. Anyhow, I just wanted you to see that, you know, back in these days, these guys were dealing with some pretty rough stuff to throw around. These guys like Arnie Herber, you know, way back in, when was it that Arnie played? Arnie played 1930 to 1945. So, I mean, Arnie was throwing around this thing, man. This is Arnie. I mean, that's what Arnie had to deal with. No wonder you look at Arnie's stats, and he had 40.9% completion and 9.0 interception percent. So back in that day, you're doing good if you complete 4 out of 10 to your people. You're doing pretty good if you don't complete 10% of your passes to the other team. So back when this thing was being thrown around, half the time it was being caught. But only 40% by your team, 10% by the other team. No wonder people did not want to pass the ball very much. Instead, they wanted to run. It was more safe, less turnovers. So just wanted you to know that you know, those people were dealing with things like that. You know, Bob Waterfield, 1945 to 1952. These poor guys. Norm Van Brocklin, 1949 to 1960. I mean, they're dealing with a little bit of a rough rock to throw around. Otto Graham. Mr. Otto Graham, 1946 to 1955. Yet he still put up these kind of incredible numbers that he did. 86.6% rating, only 5.1% interception, 55.8% completion. That's serious. I thank you very much, this humble vicar of Almighty Lord God Jesus. Thanks you for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you next show. And with that, I say,